You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and I'm flying solo in my intro this week, but it's for good reason. You know, if you've been listening to this show with any frequency the last couple of weeks, a couple weeks ago we had Eric and Eric on. We talked about our wish list for Enchanted Parks, and in that episode, we put out a plea to the folks at Enchanted Parks that said, hey, these are our ideas. Come, we'd love to talk to you about it. Let's make something happen. And kind of on a whim, I reached out to their marketing team and I asked if I could do an interview. And lo and behold, they granted us an interview. I believe one of the first couple of interviews that CEO James Harhi has done in the surrounding the industry after the Enchanted Parks announcement. We're not the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, but we are Coaster101. We can ask questions about theme parks. We can ask questions about roller coasters. In the next half hour or so, I got a real quick Q&A with James Harhi, the CEO. We learned a little bit about his background, kind of his vision for Enchanted Parks. And if you listen all the way to the end, there is a really, really big piece of news that nobody's really talking about yet. It involves the dining plans and what was mentioned. You got to listen to it, though. It's going to be great. So without further ado, strap in for the next half hour or so and listen to an interview with me and CEO of Enchanted Parks, James Harhi. Hope you enjoy. So, James, welcome to the Coaster101 podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited to have you on.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
For sure. Before we get into all things Enchanted Parks, obviously a huge news story in the industry over the last couple of weeks, I want to talk a little bit about you. Let's talk James Harhi, CEO of Enchanted Parks. What's your background in the industry, and can you tell us a little bit about the history, abbreviated as it is, the history of Enchanted Parks?
Yeah, it all started, I kind of tell people the story when I ask that question, is it all started back in 1996. I got a fun summer job as a lifeguard at Disney's Contemporary Resort. And I joke, I was walking out into the parking lot one day. I was getting ready to graduate from college. And I was looking at this ugly pink castle at the Magic Kingdom because we'd walk in the parking lot. And every night I would stare at that castle as I was walking in my car. And I said, can I really do this for a living, or do I need to go find a real job or go find a job somewhere else? And I said, let's give it a shot. Ended up getting a salary job within Disney shortly thereafter, the next summer, and worked my way up through Disney for a while, and enjoyed that time there. Realized I probably wasn't a corporate guy, and I needed to move a little bit faster in life. So I left Disney and became an entrepreneur. And since then, I've started and sold, a handful of companies, maybe 10 different companies that I've started, sold, done different things with on that time. And that led to 2012. We started a company called IAM, which was our management consulting company. We did a lot of theme park design, development, managing, taking over for owners who weren't parks weren't performing. That was our core base, and did well with that. But then we got into this loop of, I would come in, the park would do well, the owner would be great, he would sell it, and then have to go to my next park. So we didn't enjoy that loop. So I said, you know what, we have to start buying our own parks. And it took a little while to get the capital right and get the right partners. So in 24, we bought Water Safari up in Old Forge, New York. That was our first kind of venture in the owner-operator space. Bought that, did very well with that product the last 2 years. And then last year we bought Diggerland in New Jersey, just outside of Philadelphia. Did well with that last year. And then we were presented this opportunity to help Six Flags divest some of the properties, and we jumped right on it.
Perfect. And I know this is a deal, reading the legalese. I'm by no means a legal expert here. This is Six Flags has divested. They've sold to EPR, and Enchanted Parks is going to be kind of the management, the operations side. How did the partnership between EPR and Enchanted Parks kind of come to be?
Right when we first did the water safari deal back in 24, we did a little bit of a dating at the IAPA show where I got to meet some of their key employees and kind of talk about my philosophy to parks, and they kind of talked to me about their philosophy and for investment. Um, it aligned. We were aligned in our strategies and our core values. So we agreed to move forward with the water safari deal at that point. Actually, it might have been a year before that we actually first started talking, and then it took about a year for us to get our first deal going. And then, but the easiest way to explain it is there's a lot of ways to finance these kind of deals. The issue with theme parks is they're very real estate heavy. A lot of the value is locked up in real estate and not necessarily the cash value of the operations. So that's where it works well with EPR and I is they're able to buy the real estate as a real estate investment trust. They're able to buy the real estate, hold on to it for a long term, and I'm able to buy what we call the cash flow of the business. So I have a 40-year lease with EPR to operate these parks. So it's not a short term. We're not a management company who will be fired 3 years from now, and somebody else will come in and it'll be Bob's Parks, in 2030. So this is a long-term agreement we have with them. We put up part of the capital to do the transaction, and then we work together on building these out. And EPR is very well known in the industry. That this was a little bit more public deal for them. They do a lot of work with like Topgolf is one of their main tenants. Nobody would ever think like I walk in a Topgolf that EPR owns that. They own all the real estate in the buildings of the Topgolf, most of the Topgolfs. And then AMC movie theaters, another big of their clients. That once again, you walk in, you watch the movies, you have no idea who EPR is. It'll be very similar at these parks. We just have some financial reporting we have to do. We have other things like that, but it's not like EPR is not on our board. They don't participate in the operations. It's really going to be run by a team of people who have been born and raised in parks.
Perfect. And the 6 parks that Enchanted Parks is going to they're going to manage are Worlds of Fun, Michigan's Adventure, Valley Fair, Six Flags St. Louis, Great Escape, Schlitterbahn Galveston. When you were kind of figuring out with these parks, why was it those 6 parks? And why was now the right time to kind of get in on the ground level at these places?
Our goal was I'd say the 6 parks were presented to us, or a handful of parks were presented to us. I'll say it that way. Mm-hmm. They were presented to us. There was a little bit of negotiation back and forth on it, but I think in the general sense is that we were looking for profitable parks. It's always hard to buy a park that loses money, so because usually these things are bought on what they call an EBITDA multiple. So you take how much money it makes and then you multiply that by a number, and that's kind of how you start with a price to buy a park or sell a park at that point. When it's a negative number, it gets interesting. Like how do you, are you going to pay me to take the park, or how do you do that? So, these parks these were all earners. They were doing well, but they were also kind of below the key threshold that Six Flags that generates the majority of Six Flags EBITDA. So so these were kind of that mid-tier park in the portfolio, which we were very excited about.
For sure. How do you feel like the 6 parks that you're going to manage, they complement your existing park portfolio of Water Safari and Diggerland?
I think it's a nice geographic set for us. One of the things that we were excited about that we have, Great Escape and Old Forge are very close to each other, only about 2 hours away. And then, but it also kind of, we have a little bit in Michigan, and we have that northern section there. Then we have the center of the country, and then we have down in Texas. So we kind of get a variance on weather patterns with that spread out. So that was one of the things we really liked. And I think I think in general, we think Diggerland is a great concept. For kids, it's one of the most unique concepts out there, and we think there's opportunities for us to expand that brand throughout the country. And these are great opportunities potentially to bring that product to maybe the center of the country. But we also think it's an opportunity. People like Diggerland is probably our unique asset, that it is a park that people will travel to. It's probably the only destination of the park. It's probably our smallest park, but it's probably our one destination park, where most of these other parks are more regional. But we get people that fly in from California, from all over the country, just to experience that park because of the uniqueness of it.
Yeah, it's kind of that touch a truck concept, but on a
Much
totally
better,
different.
yeah.
I love it. You mentioned the proximity of Water Safari and Great Escape. Is there, I mean, we could be talking too far in advance here. Is there a plan for those two parks, kind of given their proximity, to kind of work together on a package deal or anything like that?
No, absolutely. I mean, you'll be seeing, this season's kind of baked in at this point, so we're not going to be doing much with our season pass for 26. We're just going to kind of continue status quo. But, we think that there'll be some, definite, cross attendance in our parks. Even Kansas City, St. Louis, we consider those two kind of parks joined together in that region of Missouri. That the people are going to be going back and forth, between that, so we can have some overlap there. So I think that's our general concept, and then we plan on, we'll have some more announcements later, but I think you'll see a revamp on the season pass program that our consumer will appreciate.
Okay. I want to talk kind of about these six parks. Do you see, I know you gave an interview recently to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. You called Six Flags St. Louis going to be kind of the crown jewel of the chain a little bit.
Yeah.
But what specific potential do you see in each of these six parks? I'll start with Worlds of Fun. What do you see as kind of the biggest potential there?
They had some of the Worlds of Fun fans had a little envy of my crown jewel statement on St. Louis, that they all have upside opportunity. What we look at is that each of these parks, we feel with the right attention, pricing strategies, can go back up. They've all had declining attendance for the past few years, and we feel there's opportunities with the right programming, right pricing, and that we can get people to come back to these parks. And as you get people to come back, then that makes it a lot easier to buy attractions. And it's a little bit of a, and we have some opportunities if we have to nudge people along to buy attractions, if we have to buy attractions to get them there. But I think I tell my employees all the time, if you're not growing, you're dying as a company. So we want to get these parks back into growth mode, so that people are excited to come there. We can get attendance numbers up. And then that helps everything it's a self-fulfilling prophecy if we can get to those levels.
Got it. And I know, again, you're coming in right now. The parks, as you said, 2026 is kind of baked in. I feel like a lot of these parks and most parks around the country, they've kind of got a long-term plan, a 5-year roadmap. Are you taking their Google Maps directions, or are you coming in with your own route? How are you kind of taking on that 5-year plan that may or may not exist at these parks?
We did an analysis on the ride infrastructure, is what we did a lot of our work in the past 3 months, is really inspecting the rides, understanding what works, what doesn't work, trying to make sure that we can get ride up times and consistency on ride up times improved for 26. That's one of our big initiatives. And then the way I look at it is, if I was talking to the employees last week. I went to Great Escape, Michigan, and Kansas City all last week. And what I explained to them is, I walked these parks in the snow, and it wasn't snowing too much this past week, but I walked them all at some level. And for me to understand what this park really is, when I tell them, you got to put the water on, you got to put the water in the pools, you got to get the roller coasters moving, and there's just a magic that happens at that point. I said our focus this year is really to understand what the consumer wants and what our employees are telling us on how to do it, and then our plan 26 is a learning year, and then 27 will develop that 5-year plan. Like, we have tranches of money available to do attractions, things like that, but our focus is, it would be really silly for me to announce a new coaster here or there when I don't know if that's what we really need. It really is a matter of, yes, I've had a lot of people who are very expressly on social media told me all the things they would do on their roller coaster tycoon imagination. But I think at the end of the day, it's really a matter of, taking that feedback, but also seeing what the guests actually do in the park. What lines do we have that are too long? What lines aren't long at all? What do we have? What do we need? What's the guest telling us they want? What kind of attractions? Is it family? Is it thrill? Is it water? Those are all different, big buckets and a lot of different attractions in each one of those buckets. So that's what we're going to focus on in 26 is really understanding what the consumer wants and then try to answer those questions in 27, 28.
I got it. You've got a background on kind of on the water park side. You started as a lifeguard. You've managed through IAM a lot of water parks. Obviously, all of these parks have pretty fantastic water parks in their own right. Do you think it's going to be it's going to be, especially in those first years, is it going to be a toss up of like, do we want to focus on the water park? Do we want to focus on the dry park? Or is it very much a case by case basis? We're like I said, take that year 2026, figure out what's needed and go from there.
It honestly, it's where the lines are. That's honestly where the feedback's going to come. It's going to come more than a survey because people can put what they want on the survey all day long. I can survey people and stuff like that. If our longest lines are these attractions, that's what the data is telling me that we've got to add additional capacity, whether it's additional trains on the track, whether it's additional rides in that genre. That's what we're looking at. And it doesn't matter which one it comes from. That's going to be the data-driven strategy as we go forward.
Okay. I know it's about the data. I want to get in your head right now.
Yeah.
If there was just not a one size fits all attraction, but if there was one attraction that was like, I want this, I want to have this at one of our parks. Is there anything out there in the industry that's going on right now where you're like, I gotta have that?
No, I'm too pragmatic. I know you're trying to fish me in there, but honestly, it's really just a matter of, I'll say like, I'm from Orlando. Velocicoaster is probably the best coaster I've been on. At least that's of all the ones I've been on. I haven't been on anything at Cedar Point or anything like that, but Velocicoaster is an amazing roller coaster. It probably costs Universal $200 million, $300 million to build it. That's not coming to any of our six parks. I'll just be honest, and to temper the expectation from our people. Now, are there pieces of Velocicoaster that we could do, or components of it, or elements that we would be able to bring to these parks? Absolutely. And we'll talk to the manufacturers about that as we kind of do it. But in the grand scheme of things, we look at these as, these are regional parks that people can come to. Our drive time is probably 2 to 3 hours at the most, that people are going to be that live in those markets that generationally have come to these parks. They've done all that stuff. And I'm perfectly acceptable with them having a season pass to us and planning an annual vacation to Orlando, to Cedar Point, to Carowinds, Knott's Berry Farm, wherever they want to go for that destination experience. We know where we are in life and we know what will make us good. I think where the parks can fail is you try to take that universal solution of what a theme park or water park should be and try to bring it down to everywhere. And there are, in my mind, in the theme park world, water park world, you have destination and regional, but you also have to price them differently. People don't, when they go to Disney, the wallet just disappears. The credit card just keeps flowing. Same thing at Universal, same thing at, some of these bigger parks. The wallet keeps flowing. We need to be value priced. We need to be priced right. We need to have quality food. We need to have happy people that it feels like you're going somewhere and you're able to experience that, make some memories with your family. That's our niche. That's our model. That's what you're going to see in Enchanted Parks. And that's what we'll continue to do, as we build the future.
Okay. You mentioned to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that, the name Six Flags St. Louis obviously is not a Six Flags park anymore, and it's going to go back to that name of Mid-America by Enchanted Parks. And you don't have to reveal anything right now. I know this is a game,
Yep.
and it's how it works. But are the plans to kind of have similar, regional titles for the other parks in the chain? Enchanted Parks is it going to be kind of a similar naming convention, or is it still a TBD at this point?
From a branding and a trademark, all of them will have like the tagline by Enchanted Parks. And on the logos, when you see the logos come out in a couple of weeks, they'll be the by Enchanted Parks is very minimalistic in the concept. Our goal is, like I said earlier, people are going to Valley Fair because that's where they went as kids. They went with their grandparents. They went with their parents. Now they're bringing their kids, their grandkids, their next generation, things like that. So I think our goal is to pay homage to that. We couldn't accord. Enchanted Park St. Louis just didn't make sense. And one, it's not about us. We want it to be about the park. So that's why we went with Mid America. We'll have a similar kind of change at Galveston because we won't have the Schlitterbahn name after this year. So we'll have a new name for Galveston. And then we've got, Great Escape will just become Six Flags Great Escape is just going to become Great Escape, and they'll all be by Enchanted Parks on the logo, just so that our guests understand this is our brand and this is the brand we're building at that point, but with the focus being on the core name, the original name of the parks.
Okay. And again, I know this might not be something you're able to tell me, but in that St. Louis Post-Dispatch article, you talked about how there have been ongoing conversations regarding the IP that's existing in the parks. Again, 2026 happens. The licensing agreement goes through the end of this year. Can you shed a little light on kind of how those conversations with the IP stakeholders have been going, and if there's, positive or neutral direction on any of that?
When you're in contract negotiations, you gotta keep certain things close to the vest. All I'll say is that there's a desire by all parties, the licensees and by Enchanted Parks, to have long-term relationships. So we need to get through a couple of hurdles and develop our own relationship with both IPs. And it's very important to the Schultz and Sony from the Peanuts product that we can make sure that we're the right operator for them. We have to prove ourselves. We're brand stewards. The same thing for Warner Brothers. We need to prove to Warner Brothers that we're gonna respect their brand and we're gonna be good stewards of it, so that so they'll be happy that we're displaying their product at a certain level. So I think 26 is a lot of learning more about each other as we build a foundation to go forward.
Perfect. And I know, in the industry, this has happened. It's happened before, especially I feel like at Great Escape, it was Superman Ride of Steel, then it was Ride of Steel, then Superman again. So totally get it. Absolutely understand it. Another thing I wanted to kind of check your temperature on is these parks, a number of them have had kind of seasonal events, Halloween haunts, winter fests, winter events, things like that. Some of them have gone away over the years. Is it the intention of Enchanted Parks to keep it status quo, keep it as is for 2026, see what's going on for the future, maybe bring back some of these events that have kind of gone away? I know specifically, I feel like Worlds of Fun, I think they had a winter event several years ago that did go away, and I think there's a very passionate fan base who would love to have it back. Probably the same people who were a little upset at your Crown Jewel comment on the St. Louis paper. Is there kind of can we look forward to maybe some future announcements about seasonal events potentially returning to some of these properties?
Yeah, our goal is the haunt product will stay. It'll be under a new name, which we'll announce a little bit later in the season. But we usually have a family, which I think Six Flags had similar family Halloween event and then an adult Halloween event at night. That will continue. And then when it comes to the holiday, I think we're definitely going to explore the business case for it and make sure that it makes sense and make sure that it's all there. But for right now, my key focus on is, some of these parks open in 5 weeks, 4 weeks, kind of range. So we've got our core focus right now is getting these parks open for opening weekend. And then once we can take a breath, we'll come back and look at the Christmas stuff. I'll just say I know from a Halloween event, there will be Halloween events at the parks that had them previously.
Okay. You mentioned that short run week, that 4 or 5 week runway. What's ongoing at the parks right now as kind of the Six Flags transition is going out, the Enchanted team is coming in? How is the Enchanted Parks team kind of preparing for these openings at these 6 properties?
I'm having an enjoyable 8 hours of calls a day, getting ready for this. And I'm sure my park managers are not enjoying 8 hours of phone calls when they probably got to be out in the park, making sure we're getting ready. So we're trying to take as much off of them as we can so they can focus on the opening. I think our goal right now is once I told everybody I look at it very simple: clean, safe, fun. That's all I want when we open the door. It needs to be clean, needs to be safe, and needs to be fun. If we can do those three things, everything else kind of works itself out. So our goal right now is just to get that message to our employees. And even when I was at each park last week, I told them all, I said, the number one focus right now is not to worry about what James wants, what Six Flags wants. It's to get the park open on time. That's your North Star. So we have to continue going that way, and nothing can block you from that. If I'm blocking you from that, you need to tell me so I can get out of the way. And that's primarily what we're working on right now is, even when these parks open up, luckily we're only open up on weekends for a couple of weeks until we get closer to the summer. So we can get it open and we continue some of our transition stuff. There's just a lot of, honestly, the part that we're most focused on is technology. We're going from a Six Flags proprietary tech stack to our own, tech stack on that point when it comes to point of sales, when it comes to ticketing, when it comes to mobile ordering, all those type of things that we do. We've got to flip that pretty quickly. And that's the stuff that I'm working on primarily, but I'm trying to keep it out of my operating team so they can get the kitchen ready, they can get everything else ready, and then we'll come in and do some training as we get closer to opening and hopefully make their life and our guest life less friction is our goal.
Yep. And you mentioned the tech coming in. You guys are working with Whitewater and their Vantage. Looks like the graphics I've seen see some kind of wristbands, some frictionless payments, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the decision to go with Vantage and Whitewater for this new technology?
Yeah, I've been working with Vantage personally for about 7 years now, and watched them kind of develop that product from the initial. We were one of their initial beta sites when we first started, and I feel like they've really gotten to where they need to be at this point. Our goal is that the guests can move around the park, do what they need to do, and anytime that you're having stress in the park is a bad opinion to me. So we think their tech will help us out a lot. There might be some RFID, there might be just some barcoded wristbands. There's a lot of different ways to achieve goals. So our vision is that we'll get this done, and it'll be a growing concept. I'll be honest. Our guest app will probably come out near Memorial Day. So we'll have a couple parks that are open before the guest app is open, completely functional. But we want to make sure it's right, get all of our testing done. And then you'll see 26 will be kind of I'll be honest, it's going to be not a fully functional 100% of where we want to be, but 27, I think you'll see the functions in the app that you would expect from a high quality park that has everything there. So 26, we're going to have some basic functions in it. 27 will be at a much higher level, a lot more integration, a lot of areas where you'll be able to do a lot of things with your phone pre-arrival, set up your day, and do it all in one app versus potentially having to bounce around this year between maybe a couple different websites as we work on that integration 100%.
I got it. And then the last question I've got for you, you got somewhere between a 5-week and 60-day runway here. What are you most excited for over that next time period?
I want to ride some rides. I some of these parks I've never been to, and there's some rides in there that I've never ridden before. So my excitement is I want to get on there and ride the rides and experience them. That's part of the whole experience, and I look forward to seeing our smiling guests and our smiling employees, and experience those rides with them. I'm the type of guy where I'll be riding a ride and you'll be right next to somebody and they'll probably have no idea that I'm riding a ride with them. And then I'll get off and I like to have my hands on stuff. But that's probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most. My kids are very excited. They have 2 teenage daughters, and they have every summer we spend a week at a park and they have to work the park. So last year they were at Old Forge. They did the Dippin' Dots store, and they sold Dippin' Dots for a week from morning to close, and they did that, and that was their job. And so they're excited about which park they're going to pick and spend a week. You'll probably see if you're the park they pick, you'll probably be buying Dippin' Dots or some other kind of product for my kids for the summer. And they come back and they tell me this worked, it didn't work, and I ask them a ton of questions like what sold, what didn't sell, what do people complain about. all those type of things. They're my little secret agents to tell me what's going on and what. And I ask the same questions to my employees, but they know to give me straight answers and tell me what they saw in their day at that point.
So you're secret shopping inside the family. I love it so much. Awesome.
No, we're raising them. We're raising them right in the theme park world. So
even better. Well, the best way for people to kind of follow along with the progress of Enchanted Parks is the Enchanted Parks website, presumably social media, enchantedparks.com, right?
Yep. And you wouldn't be surprised if for the past month I read just about every social media comment people make. And I've been honestly running the Facebook Messenger. I've been answering all the questions personally to people just so I can hear what they're saying. And I've kind of taken that on in my other duties just so I can hear what people want to say and be connected to them and understand the different requests they may have and assure them on stuff. But the one thing that probably comes up the most that I think we did a bad job explaining in the press release is that we're still working through that meal plan question. And that if we can't figure it out, we're still working, like I said, we're still working through. I got to jump on an IT call here in a couple minutes to kind of talk about that. But if there's anything we can't deliver, there will be 100% refund to our guests. I think the $10 credit kind of confused people. We're not going to give you a $10 credit and say, oh, by the way, your meal plan doesn't work. That's not what we're going to do. If we can't get the meal plan or something else working, and just because of these IT changes, we're going to issue 100% refund to every family, every bot holder, everybody that bought a pass or bought a thing like that. We're going to take care of them. So I just want to get that message out there as well.
Absolutely. And that's a good message to end on. But
Yep.
James, thank you so much for taking time between these 8 hours a day of calls to speak with us on the Coaster 101 podcast. We can't wait and see what Enchanted Parks has in store for 26, 27, and beyond.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Cool.
All right.
That was painless. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. I know you got to jump.
Problem.
But if you don't mind emailing me that file, we will post this probably next Monday.
Okay. No problem at all.
And if you need anything from me, don't hesitate to reach out.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And we're back. I really enjoyed talking to James. He's clear to me he's got a passion for the industry, and there are some great things coming down the pipeline for Enchanted Parks in 2026, 2027, and beyond. So I'm excited to kind of see what the future holds for this company. I'm excited for them to breathe some new life into these 6 U.S. properties that they're going to be managing. And that note at the end about the dining plans. I know a lot of people were up in arms online about the $10 credit not being enough if the dining plans aren't able to work, but being refunded in full, I believe that's a great gesture from Enchanted Parks. So excited to see how that works, and hopefully the dining plans work out for everybody and it's not going to be an issue. But if not, Enchanted Parks has you guys covered. After you visit enchantedparks.com for the latest and greatest of all things, what they've got going on, give us a visit, coaster101.com. We are also on all forms of social media at Coaster101. We're right in the middle of our Park Mania Bracket Challenge, the 10th annual edition of this. So go vote for your favorite parks, advance them in the bracket, and somebody at a marketing office is going to get a trophy sent to their park. Coaster101.com/merch for the latest and greatest theme park inspired merchandise. And if you're listening, make sure you're also liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, leaving 5-star reviews on Spotify, writing reviews on iTunes. The more people who do that, the more people will listen to the show, and the better opportunities we get when we send kind of cold emails to a marketing office for a brand new theme park company to get their CEO on our podcast. So make sure you're doing all those things. It really helps us out. And last but certainly not least, a huge thank you to Justin Mabry and JM Entertainment for our theme music. That new theme, it's awesome. I love it so much. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster 101 podcast, and we will talk to you again soon. See ya.